Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is Thursday, November 13th, 2025. That is 1,425 mornings of Torah, every weekday for 5.5 years, finding each other from around the world. Meirav and Ryan, good to see you. Safta, Cheryl, and Susie, Adele, Boker Tov, Anava, nice to see you. Tara, Boker Tov to you too. Hi, Penny. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this growing community of people all around the world who just find each other, just know to look, and that there will be a community waiting to learn and to share. It's a blessing. Lydia, good to see you. Penny, thank you for the reminder. It is broadcast 1,425. Cynthia and Linda, Peter and Jacqueline, good morning. Rosa and Chalet, Deborah, Tziona, and Karen, good morning, friends. Hi, Barry. Hope that you're well. Hi, Joyce. All right, let's take a breath. We're going to sing a bracha and then learn some Torah. Here we go. La 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 la, hi la la la, la 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 la, ay la la la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Hafoch ba ve'afoch ba la'asok b'divrei Torah. La 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 la, la 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 la, ay la la la. Boker Tov, everyone. Special Boker Tov, Uncle Alex. Nice to see you, my friend. We are in the middle of the week. We are learning about Parshat Chayei Sarah. Now, we have looked a few times over the last couple of mornings at the generational transitions between Abraham and Sarah, Avram and Sarah, and the next generation which is Rivka and Yitzchak. But one of the things that we often overlook, and the Torah is complicated on this, is when someone doesn't have a name and yet they function as part of the story. In fact, I remember a class at JTS when I was in rabbinical school about who the most important characters in the Torah are. Professor Diane Sharon said to the whole class, who's the most important person? And we all had characters, including God, including Moshe, including, but no one mentioned this unnamed person. This unnamed person who served an incredibly instrumental part of our story. If you remember when Joseph is sent, I say if you remember, we're about to get there, it tells you about the eternity of Torah, right? It hasn't yet happened in our reading, but we know it's in there. It's good to come back to our stories. When Joseph is sent by his father Jacob to go look after his brothers, he goes to search where they're supposed to be. He can't find them. And there's a person who's just there and says to Yosef, what are you looking for? Yosef's answer is very famous. Et achai anochi mevakesh. I'm looking for my brothers. And the man, the figure, happens to know that they're in Dotan. And this man sends him on his way. If that nameless person hadn't been standing there, Joseph never would have seen his brothers. His brothers never would have sold him into slavery. He never would have arisen in Egypt to be the second in command and saved the universe, including continuing our story. And yes, as Rosa just said, it's because their actions define them, and their actions actually are the way that the plot continues. You are very important because without you, the story doesn't continue. Not the way it's supposed to. You and I are here. We are here in order for the story that we are a part of to move forward. You, as a really deep teacher, Joanne Bland, who lives in Selma, Alabama, teaches countless visitors. You are the most important character in this story, in your story. Well, in our Parsha, there's another figure who is not named. We often tell the story of Abraham sending his servant Eliezer to go find a spouse, a wife, for Isaac, who, for whatever reason, is not allowed to leave the camp. But when we tell the story, we include the name Eliezer. If you look closely at this Parsha, Eliezer's name is never mentioned. Now, we know that Abraham has a servant named Eliezer, but it is powerful to see the absence of Eliezer's name being mentioned at all here. So what does it mean? What does it come to say? Well, if, as Rosa pointed out, an action defines a person, then what actions do we see that relate to Eliezer and Rivka? Because they're not the center of the story, but without Eliezer, there is no Rivka. And Rivka becomes the center of the story, even if this is just her entry point. Her actions are incredibly important to pay attention to. Let's look at a little bit of both of them. Eliezer, as the story unfolds, says to God, prays to the God of his master Abraham. Complicated, I know, but he does, the text says. And he says, let the one who is the intended for my master's son offer me and my camels water. Think about what this takes. Telling God the sign in advance that God must provide if this is to be a successful mission. I don't think there's another character that invokes God's specific actions. There are moments where Moses or Aaron raises the staff. There are moments where Joshua holds his hands up. But it's not clear that there's another example where a character tells God what needs to happen. Eliezer does. This is a moment of significant chutzpah. Chutzpah. To tell God what you need to see. And strangely enough, that's precisely what God does. God does exactly what Eliezer says Eliezer needs. That tells us something. Sometimes we must have the chutzpah to ask for what we need. John is asking about Jacob wrestling with the angel. Jacob actually says, tell me your name, and the angel says no. There are things that Jacob needs that he receives, but he doesn't ask specifically for them. The blessings that come are the ones that move the story forward, certainly. But Jacob is transformed in a way that he didn't ask for. He needed, but didn't ask for. Eliezer is special in this way. He asks for what he needs. And as Emily just wrote, lessons in advocating. We are often, I think, hesitant to name our needs. Now, I'm not saying that you should believe, you should have a theology that if you say what you need, God will provide. I wish that were true. There'd be so many different outcomes if heartfelt blessings were answered in this way. It's not how the universe works, and I don't believe that that's what God is, but asking for what we need in all of our relationships, doing so with kavod, with respect, and with gentleness and humility. Yes, but asking to have the chutzpah to know that your need is legitimate. That's important. I know that many Jewish educators and clergy struggle with this very question because the system expects so much and doesn't necessarily say, well, what do you need? If you, my friends, are in a supervisory role on a committee or on a board where there's a Jewish educator, clergy, who is just doing their best, maybe you could take a moment and say, tell me what you need. I so appreciate you. What do you need? It's a very hard question to ask, and in relationships of any kind, be they between spouses, parents, and children, what do you need is a very important question. And for that person to have the courage and the chutzpah to say, as Eliezer did, this is the only thing I can imagine moving the story forward in the way that it needs to move. Please, this. And God answers in the text. Take that as you will. Our theologies might be different on this, but asking for what you need might even activate your inner sense of worth. That's a good reason to do it. I want to show one more personal quality, not of Eliezer's, but this time of Rivka's. Because what Eliezer asked for is for the person who is Isaac's, intended to offer water. But there's a beautiful part of this that often gets overlooked. I want to read to you. Every once in a while, I pick up our special book. For those who don't know, this is a book that was created the first year of our broadcast by rabbinical students with me. This is the text, Genesis 24:18-20. This is where Rebekah answers at the well. Drink, my lord, she said. And she quickly lowered her jar upon her hand and let him drink. When she had let him drink his fill, she said, I will also draw for your camels until they finish drinking. Quickly emptying her jar into the trough, she ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Now, we hear this story and we know that it's beautiful what she did. Have you ever thought about how much water that must have been? Listen to how a Bible scholar, Robert Alter, comments on this. This is the closest anyone comes in Genesis to a feat of Homeric heroism. A camel, after a long desert journey, drinks many gallons of water. And there are 10 camels here to water. So Rebekah, hurrying down the steps of the well, would have had to be a non-stop blur of motion in order to carry up all this water in her single jug. And then there is, as Tziona wrote earlier, the Midrash picks up on the fact, this is a comment I was making with rabbinical student, now Rabbi Julia Noblach. The Midrash picks up on the fact that Rebekah, between her dashing back and forth between the well, takes the time to lower her jar to Eliezer's lips. She goes beyond what had been asked of her with an additional gesture of kindness. Think about when these two qualities, Eliezer and Rebekah's, chutzpah and kindness, meet. Let's imagine a world, friends, where chutzpah and kindness meet, where someone in need knows that they have the right to ask for what they need, and it's met with kindness. That's a good world. In our smaller worlds within our larger world, I hope that you will know that when you truly need something, you have the right to ask for it. To expect it to be answered, that's a different question, but you have the right to need something. We're all people. We're all vulnerable. Eliezer's request might have been miraculous, but it was the mission he was sent on, and he knew that the tools he needed were beyond him, and so he reached out beyond himself and asked for what he needed. Very powerful to see that Rebekah showed up. That's miraculous too. And her not only answering the need, but showing kindness in doing it would redefine so many relationships. Sometimes we are on the side of being providers, showing kindness in the way that we offer our support. That is a blessing to be. What a gift it is to be a helper. And sometimes we are on the receiving end, where we must remember to ask for what we need, that it's not greedy to have a need and to say so. There's a difference between greed and need. And often the world makes us feel like they are similar, and they're not. Emily writes in a very important and honest way about American society right now that is pertinent right now with SNAP benefits. Hungry people are not being greedy by saying, we are hungry. And it is not just kindness, but justice that demands that we respond with the means that are at our disposal. When we discuss different allocations within our national budget or within our shul budgets, and we conflate two things, need and entitlement. Entitlement is a negative way of saying what someone actually deserves. And some of the rights that our Declaration of Independence establishes, those are rights that cannot be taken away. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is it greed to say, I really want to be happy? Is it greed to say, I want to live? Is it greed to say, I want freedom? No. As Emily points very gracefully and very succinctly, this is very important. Eliezer shows that asking for what you need is good. It takes chutzpah. It is good. And providing with whatever you have, with kindness, that is good too. That is what moves the Torah forward. That is what moves our story forward. That is what our world needs in order to move forward. A healthy combination of chutzpah and kindness. I bless us, friends. I bless you with what you need. And I also bless you with the strength to ask for it. I bless you also to remember to be kind and show up when someone asks for something that is within your wheelhouse. Someone says what they need, not only to answer it, but to answer it with kindness, to lower that vessel of water just a little bit, so that wherever they are, they can receive what they so desperately need, and you so gracefully can offer. Let's take a breath. Let's remember, friends, this is part of how Torah must unfold in our world. Chutzpah and kindness. Let's send our hearts to the east. Let's sing. Kol hod balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia od lo avda tikvateinu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים. Am Yisrael Chai. See you soon, my friends.